My name is Priya Sharma, and this is the story of how I went from being the immigrant they wanted to disappear to becoming the reason an entire town survived. I arrived in Millbrook, Ohio, in 2019 with nothing but a suitcase, a computer science degree from Delhi University, and dreams that felt heavier than my luggage. My husband Raj had gotten a job at the local manufacturing plant, and we'd moved to this small Midwestern town of 8,000 people where everyone knew everyone except us. The first time someone told me to go back where I came from, I was standing in line at the grocery store, trying to pay for milk and bread with exact change because I was still learning the currency. My English was perfect, I'd studied it since childhood, but my accent made the cashier squint at me, like I was speaking in code. "Ma'am, if you can't communicate properly, maybe you should shop somewhere that caters to your kind," she said, loud enough for the entire line to hear. An older man behind me nodded and muttered, "Damn right. Coming here, taking our jobs, can't even speak the language." I paid quickly and left, my face burning with shame and anger. That night, I cried in our tiny rental apartment while Raj tried to comfort me. "Give it time, Priya," he said. "People just need to get to know us." But time didn't help. It made things worse out at the local bank. The loan officer took one look at my name and accent and told me that foreign nationals would need additional documentation for even basic services. At the post office, they questioned whether my identification was legitimate. When I tried to volunteer at the local library, the coordinator smiled tightly and said they were looking for people who better understand American culture. The worst part wasn't the outright hostility, it was the subtle exclusion. Conversations would stop when I entered rooms. Invitations to neighborhood gatherings somehow never reached us. When I applied for jobs in my field, I'd get initial interest over the phone. But as soon as I showed up for interviews, positions would suddenly be filled or on hold. After 6 months of rejection, I took a job at Quick Mart, a gas station and convenience store on the edge of town. It was the only place that would hire me. And even then, my manager, Dale, made it clear he wasn't happy about it. "Look, I'm giving you a chance because corporate says I have to," he told me on my first day. "But don't expect any special treatment. You're here to work, not to turn this place into some foreign bazaar." I bit my tongue and nodded. I needed the job. Working at Quick Mart was humiliating for someone with my education, but I told myself it was temporary. I'd save money, build local experience, and eventually find something in tech. The customers treated me like I was invisible at best, hostile at worst. They'd speak slowly and loudly, as if volume could bridge the cultural gap they insisted existed. Understand English. They'd ask when buying cigarettes or lottery tickets. When I'd respond normally, they'd look surprised, then suspicious, as if my competence was somehow threatening. But I observed everything. During slow hours, I taught myself about the town's economy by listening to customers complain about their problems. The manufacturing plant where Raj worked was struggling. The downtown businesses were closing one by one. Young people were leaving for bigger cities. Millbrook was dying slowly but surely. That's when I noticed something everyone else had missed. During my computer science studies in India, I'd specialized in data analysis and small business optimization. Even while working the register at Quick Mart, my mind was constantly processing patterns, customer flow, purchasing habits, seasonal trends, demographic shifts. What I saw made me realize that Millbrook's problems weren't inevitable. They were solvable. The town had been built around the manufacturing plant, but the plant was outdated and losing contracts to overseas competitors. The local businesses were failing because they couldn't compete with big box stores in the next county. The young people were leaving because they saw no opportunities, but Millbrook had advantages that no one recognized. It was perfectly positioned between two major highways, had affordable real estate, reliable infrastructure, and a skilled workforce. That was being wasted. What it lacked was someone who could see how to connect these assets to modern opportunities. I spent my evenings researching economic development strategies, studying how other small towns had reinvented themselves. I analyzed Millbrook's demographic data, transportation networks, and economic indicators. I developed a comprehensive plan for how the town could transition from a dying manufacturing economy to a thriving logistics and technology hub. The plan was brilliant. I knew it was, but who would listen to the foreign girl from the gas station? That question was answered for me in March 2020, when the manufacturing plant announced it was closing permanently. In one day, 1,200 jobs disappeared. Nearly 40% of the town's employment was gone. The town hall meeting that night was packed with angry, desperate people. Mayor Johnson tried to calm everyone down, but he had no solutions to offer. The plant closure meant the town would lose its largest taxpayer, and the ripple effects would be devastating. We're exploring all options. He kept saying, we're reaching out to consultants, looking for new businesses to attract. That's when I stood up, my heart was pounding, as every head in the room turned toward me. I could feel the wave of recognition. Foreign girl from Quickmart. What could she possibly have to say? Mayor Johnson, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I have a proposal. The room erupted in murmurs. Someone in the back shouted, sit down, lady. This isn't your problem to solve. But Mayor Johnson, perhaps out of desperation, held up his hand for quiet. Go ahead, Miss Sharma, Priya Sharma, and I think I know how to save this town. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out my plan. I explained how Millbrook could become a logistics hub for e-commerce companies looking for central distribution points. I showed how the empty manufacturing space could be converted into modern fulfillment centers that would create 2,000 new jobs, 600 more than the plant had provided. I detailed how the town could attract remote tech workers by offering fiber, internet, affordable housing, and quality of life that big cities couldn't match. I demonstrated how local businesses could thrive by serving these new demographics and by optimizing their operations for digital commerce. I presented market research showing that 3 major logistics companies were actively looking for exactly what Millbrook could offer. I had contact information, preliminary discussions, and even rough timelines for implementation. The room was dead silent when I finished. Then Dale, my manager from Quickmart, stood up. Where the hell does some foreigner get off telling us how to run our town? You've been here, 2 years? We've been here our whole lives. Scattered applause and murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Go back where you came from, someone shouted. Others joined in, but then something unexpected happened. Jim Morrison, the plant foreman who was about to lose his job, stood up. Hold on, he said. I don't care where she's from. Did you actually listen to what she just said? She's talking about 2,000 jobs. More than we just lost. But can we trust her? Asked Sarah Phillips, who owned the struggling diner downtown. I felt tears burning my eyes. But I forced my voice to stay steady. Mrs. Phillips, I eat lunch at your diner 3 times a week. I know you're struggling because you've mentioned being behind on rent. I know Mr. Morrison is worried about his mortgage because he talks about it when he buys coffee at Quick. I know this town's problems because I live here too. This is my home now. Whether you accept me or not, Mayor Johnson cleared his throat. Miss Sharma, this is ... comprehensive. Where did you get the expertise to develop something like this? Asterisk, I have a master's degree in computer science with a specialization in data analysis and business optimization. Before moving here, I worked for 3 years developing economic models for small businesses in India, but no one here would hire me for that kind of work. So I stock shelves and run a cash register. The admission hit the room like a physical blow. Here was a person with exactly the expertise they needed, and they'd spent 2 years treating her like she was worthless. The meeting ended with the town council agreeing to review my proposal. I went home that night not knowing whether I'd made progress or just painted a bigger target on my back. Over the next week, my plan leaked through the town's gossip networks. The reactions were predictably mixed. Some people seemed intrigued by the possibility of new jobs and economic growth. Others were furious that an outsider was presuming to solve their problems. Asterisk, someone spray-painted, "Go home" on our apartment door. Anonymous notes were left on my car calling me a foreign schemer trying to take over our town. At Quick, several customers made pointed comments about immigrants who think they're smarter than everyone else. But something else was happening too. People started approaching me quietly at the grocery store, at the gas station, on the street, asking detailed questions about my plan. How soon could it be implemented? What kinds of jobs would be created? What were the chances it would actually work? The breakthrough came when Mayor Johnson called me into his office for a private meeting. With him was Rebecca Chen, an economic development consultant the town had hired 3 years earlier. Miss Sharma, the mayor began. Rebecca has reviewed your proposal. Rebecca, why don't you share your assessment? Rebecca looked at me with something between surprise and professional respect. Priya, your analysis is better than studies I've seen from $100,000 consulting firms. The market research is thorough, the financial projections are realistic, and the implementation timeline is aggressive but achievable. Where did you learn to do this kind of work? I explained my background again, watching their expressions change. As they realized the magnitude of the opportunity they'd been ignoring, here's my question, Mayor Johnson said. Are you willing to help us make this happen? Not just as an advisor, but as someone who takes ownership of the implementation. That's how I became Millbrook's Director of Economic Development, a position they created specifically for me. My first task was to present the revitalization plan to the county commissioners and state economic development board. The presentation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in the county seat. I spent days preparing, knowing that this was our only shot. The manufacturing plant closure had started a countdown clock if we couldn't attract new businesses quickly. The town's tax base would collapse, taking services, schools, and infrastructure. With it, the commissioner's conference room was packed with local officials, business leaders, and curious citizens. I recognized several faces from that first town hall meeting, including some who had told me to go back where I came from. I started by acknowledging the skepticism in the room. 6 months ago, many of you questioned whether I belonged in this community. Today, I'm asking you to trust me with its future. Then I laid out everything. The market analysis showing why logistics companies were desperately seeking locations like Millbrook, the infrastructure improvements that would be needed, the tax incentives that would make us competitive, and the timeline for attracting the first anchor business. But I didn't just present data. I told stories about the people I'd met working at Quickmart, the single mother worried about affording her daughter's college tuition, the retired machinist watching his pension fund shrink, the young couple considering leaving town because they couldn't find decent jobs. This isn't about economic theory, I said. It's about giving people reasons to stay, reasons to invest in their community, reasons to believe in their future. The questions came fast and skeptical. How could I guarantee that businesses would actually come? What if the logistics industry changed? Why should they risk taxpayer money on an unproven plan? I answered each one with specific data, contingency plans, and risk mitigation strategies. When Commissioner Bradley asked why they should trust someone who doesn't understand American business culture, I pulled out a folder of preliminary letters of interest from 3 major companies. Letters I'd secured through careful networking and professional outreach. Commissioner Bradley, I said, these companies don't care about my accent or where I was born. They care about transportation access, workforce availability, and cost efficiency. Millbrook can offer all 3 better than most locations they're considering. The vote was unanimous, 7-0 to approve the economic development plan and authorize me to begin implementation. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it happened faster than anyone expected. Within 8 months, I'd secured commitments from 2 logistics companies and 1 tech startup incubator. The first 400 jobs were filled by former plant workers who needed only minimal retraining. The second wave brought in workers from surrounding counties who were eager for stable employment, but the real victory was watching the town come alive again. Sarah Phillips hired 3 new servers for her diner as the lunch crowds grew. The hardware store expanded, 2 new coffee shops opened, young families started moving back. Dale, my former manager at Quickmart, was one of the first to get hired at the new logistics center as a shift supervisor, making twice what he'd ever earned. When he saw me at the town's celebration dinner, he approached with something I'd never seen from him before. Genuine respect. Priya, he said, extending his hand. I owe you an apology. Hell, we all do. I was wrong about you, and I'm man enough to admit it. Dale, I replied, shaking his hand, you weren't wrong about me being different. You were just wrong about different being bad. The economic development project was so successful that it became a model for rural revitalization across the Midwest. I was invited to speak at conferences, consult with other struggling communities, and advise state-level economic policy. But the moment that meant the most to me came 2 years after that first town hall meeting. I was at the grocery store, the same one where I'd first been told I didn't belong, when I overheard 2 women talking in the produce section. Did you see that article about Priya in the county paper? One said, they're calling her the economic development expert who saved small-town America. She's amazing. The other replied, I can't believe we almost lost her. Can you imagine if she'd actually left like some people wanted? God, we would have been idiots. She's the best thing that ever happened to this town. I stood there holding a bag of apples, tears in my eyes, thinking about the journey from being seen as a problem to being recognized as a solution. Today, Millbrook's unemployment rate is 2.1%, one of the lowest in the state. We've attracted 2,400 new jobs, bringing the town's population to nearly 12,000. The old manufacturing plant has been converted into a logistics hub that serves companies across the Midwest. I'm now the mayor of Millbrook, elected by the largest margin in the town's history. My campaign slogan was building bridges, not walls. And it resonated with a community that had learned the value of embracing Different perspectives. The people who once told me to go back where I came from now introduced me to visitors as our secret weapon and the woman who saved our town. Their children learn about economic development and global thinking in schools that are thriving because of the tax revenue we've generated. But perhaps the most meaningful change is in how Millbrook treats newcomers. We've become a destination for immigrants and refugees who bring skills, perspectives, and energy that strengthen our community. The town that once saw diversity as a threat now sees it as an asset. When I speak to other communities facing similar challenges, I always tell them, your salvation might be sitting right in front of you. In the person you're not listening to because they don't look like what you expect expertise to look like. 3 years ago, I was the foreign girl they wanted to disappear. Today, I'm the reason thousands of people have work, families can stay together, and a community has hope for the future. I didn't go back where I came from. Instead, I helped create a place where everyone belongs. My name is Priya Sharma. And this is how I learned that home isn't where you're from, it's where you're needed, where you're valued, and where you choose to build something better. And sometimes, the person everyone wants to reject is exactly the person everyone needs to embrace. If this story inspired you, we'd love to have you join our community. Subscribe to Everyday Life Stories for more incredible tales of people who proved everyone wrong and achieved the impossible. Every week, we share real stories of underdogs, overlooked heroes, and ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because you never know which story might change how you see your own potential. Thanks for watching, and remember, your background might be your biggest advantage, even when others see it as a barrier.